Hello and welcome to the EU Perspectives podcast. I'm your host today, Jennifer Baker, and joining me here in the European Parliament are MEP Ondřej Knotek, Patriots for Europe group and member of the Sant Committee. In 2020, he also joined the Special Committee on Beating Cancer and previously worked at Rotarex, a Czech pharmaceutical company. Joining him is Adrian van den Hoven, Director General of Medicines for Europe since September 2013, focusing on access to medicine, supporting policy measures for sustainable pricing and promoting efficient regulatory standards. He's also the former president of the European Medicines Verification Organisation. Unsurprisingly, given our guest, today we're talking about medicines and the pharmaceutical sector more generally. But first and foremost, the EU Urban Wastewater Treatment Directive and its revision. So let's start with that, gentlemen. Came into force from the 1st of January 2025. Now, this is about wastewater, so not drinking water, but the water that leaves our buildings and goes back out into the environment. We might swim in it in our rivers and lakes. So, of course, we want it to be free from pollutants and uncontaminated. It's also in touch with nature, so we want none of those horrible, pesky, forever chemicals. So far, most people tend to agree with that, and the Commission's approach has been based on the polluter pays principle. Again, nothing terribly controversial. Most stakeholders and citizens agree with that. Where it gets a bit more controversial and a bit more tricky is calculating who's going to pay and how much they're going to pay, because only two sectors have been highlighted as being responsible, and that's the cosmetic sector and, for our topic today, the pharmaceutical sector. So, Ondřej, that's a layman's summing up of what's happening. What are you hearing here in the Parliament? What is this controversy about?
It is a clear controversy because we are in a situation that on one hand the European Union is trying to get back the pharmaceutical production on the EU soil as one of the, let's say, solutions for example, insufficiencies in medicines. And on the other hand, we have here environmental, I would say logical legislation, but made in that way that basically expels the producers, if I can be almost honest, out of the Europe. And this is definitely not the correct approach, because EU policies shall not contradict, and here in this case it's absolutely contradicting. And it also, in this case, we see one issue that during the time that the policy is prepared, the stakeholders, the impacted stakeholders, they warned about this situation. They tried to comment these negative impacts, unfair impacts, but they were not listened enough. The legislation has been approved, and now we are in a situation that on almost last moment we are trying to figure out how to not step back from the protection of the planet, of the environment, and also how to not harm the businesses. And it's not a simple equation.
I'm going to come back to you on the timeline in a moment, but first, Adrian, this is a cost matter. I mean, it costs a lot of money to treat this water after it has left. This is final end stage treatment. Tell us about the economics of it. Where do the prices add up? Where do they not?
Well, I think the first thing that's important to underline is this is not about the wastewater from our production sites. That is required to be treated. In some cases, there's zero liquid discharge, special treatment plants, etc. So it's really about when you take a medicine, part of it is metabolized in your body and disappears, and part of it goes down the sewer. So this is what this is about, and what the legislation is saying is that basically based on the volume of the medicines sold, you will have to pay for the wastewater treatment. Most common medicines are generic medicines. That's what most people take, 70% of the medicines. They'll have to pay around 60-70% of the cost of this treatment, which the Commission claims is about 1.5 billion euros per year. Germany says it's about 5 billion per year for Europe. The Netherlands says it's about 6. So there are a lot of figures around this. We've looked at this, and one of the big challenges is that you take a commonly used medicine like metformin, which is an anti-diabetic medicine. This costs, let's say, somewhere between 3 and 7 euros a box, okay? With these additional fees, if you take the Dutch figures for how much it's going to cost, this will no longer be 3 euros a box, but 27 euros to 49 euros a box. That's a month's worth of treatment. So will the healthcare system pay for that additional price? Will it be the patient? This is something, a little bit crazy. I looked at my water bill today. The Commission says if it was paid just through the water bill, it would cost 3 euros a person. We are 5 people in my home. That would be 15 euros a year. So what makes more sense? 27 euros or 50 euros for a diabetic patient, or 15 euros that's per month, or 15 euros per year for me. I think this, makes a lot more sense.
I mean, so who's pushing back on that? I presume it's people like wastewater treatment plants are saying we will have more to do. Where are we getting our extra resources from? Because there's perhaps an argument to be made that are pharmaceutical companies making enough money? Can they absorb more of it? And wastewater treatment plants will claim they're not. What's your reaction to that?
Well, sure. I think indeed this comes from the wastewater treatment industry. So they're the ones who asked for this special levy on the pharmaceutical industry. I think the challenge with this is that the Commission claims that 92% of all the chemicals in the wastewater are pharmaceuticals, 66%, and around 28% or 30% cosmetics. The problem with that figure is that they claim that one single pharmaceutical, a blood pressure medicine, is 41% of all the chemicals in wastewater, around 2,000 chemicals in wastewater, but one of them, a blood pressure medicine, would be 41%. So there's an error in the calculation, and this is why there's this, let's say, excessive pressure on the pharmaceutical industry and on pharmaceutical or medicines consumption. In terms of cost, of course, if this cost would be spread across all chemical industries, let's say, probably it would not have such a huge impact. But as it's concentrated on the pharmaceutical industry and on volume, and volume means cheaper, older, inexpensive generic medicines, well, they're going to be heavily hit, as I said. For the Dutch calculation, we're going from 3 euros to 27 euros a month. I mean, that's not insignificant. Who's going to pay for that? That's really a challenge.
I will come back to in a bit about the knock-on effects in terms of investment in other medicines as well, because I know R&D makes up a huge block. But Ondřej, to come back to you, let's talk about the timeline, because one of the proposals is to stop the clock on this.
Yep.
Tell us what that means and who's for it and who's against it.
It's a very logical proposal that aims to stop the implementation and give the European Commission more time to, let's say, come with second round of impact assessment calculations, appropriate cost analysis, because even voices from European Commission say and claim that, let's say, this original calculations and all the supportive assessments were, let's say, done in a very fast manner on the cost of quality. Also, the Commission admits that. Yeah? So I think also here in the European Parliament, among the political groups, there are concerns, no matter whether you are from right or left wing, because also the left wing politicians are interested that the citizens get the medicine. Of course, it is a legitimate concern. On the other hand, from center to the left, it's basically everything ultra green, I would say, today in the European Parliament. So this logical proposal for stop the clock, it has mainly support from the center to right and not from the center to left. And now we are in the middle of negotiations for the plenary session that is about to be in 14 days. So we will see where we will land. Of course, both sides come with strong demands, so we more see not only stop the clock, but basically possibly request full suspension. Okay, perhaps we are able to step back, but I see importance of the stop the clock because the investors, the pharma company, they need to have a clarity, and of course they cannot wait for 1 month before this obligation come in place and then change their business. No, they plan, and I'm sure it can be confirmed that the production is planned and the capacities are planned years in advance. Investments are planned. So we are in certain way in a time pressure. So this stop the clock would ease the situation, would give time to the Commission, but also would ease the situation for the pharma business that is challenged from many reasons other than this one.
Well, I presume some of the reasons there is a bit of agreement between the different sides in the political sense is because access to medicines and the stakeholders, our citizens, is absolutely crucial. Yep. What is on the table in terms of timeframes or how these assessments can be done more correctly? Is that about just more stakeholder buy-in? Is it about a different approach, a different methodology?
I think it combines all elements, and the cornerstone would be to listen more to the industry, because it's true, and I can confirm it. I was the MEP also in the previous mandate. The previous European Commission, the College of Commissioners, was not so often listening to the businesses. I don't say that they were not listening, but let's say there was an occasion for improvement. This Commission promised to listen more, so now they have chance to do it. And on the other side, the Commission is preparing or considering some ways how to, in case that everything will remain unchanged, how to ensure that, of course, the national healthcare systems will not bear this burden, and of course also not the pharma companies. So this is I don't want to repeat the word equation, but it's an equation that is not easy to solve. On the other hand, there are some models, I think in Switzerland, or simply way that if you buy medicine in a pharmacy, you just get some extra payment, extra surplus during the payment at the cash register. So there are ways how to do it, but politically, for the domestic politicians, not one is good, because this payment method that I described, it would increase the burden for the citizens. So of course, we need the companies to stay in Europe, to produce in Europe. It is a matter of security and health of the population, that this is clear. Citizens shall be also protected not to pay so much more. So also there is a logical question whether our environmental standards, and I really do not question the direction of the standards, whether they are maybe too much ambitious when we look outside the world, that everyone wishes the best environment possible, but if we press too much, we will remain without industry, without economic power, and at the end we will not be able neither to fulfill our climate and environmental goals. So also this is the agenda that part of the House here is pushing forward. Of course, there are some our greener opponents. They say no way back, no step back, because if we step back, we will not save the planet. But if we look what's going on in other parts of the world, maybe we are really a little bit too ambitious. But as I said, I do not question the direction. The direction is correct. Just the speed and maybe the goals are too soon, too fast. But that's the political reality.
Well, we don't have anyone here today from the European Commission, although, of course, at EU Perspectives, we do indeed talk with them for our articles. But from the point of view even of the Council, perhaps, is there a difference between whether a larger member state and smaller member states react to this?
The impact is disproportional when it comes to the generic/innovative production. Yeah. So, of course, generic producers, their margin on the medicine package is much lower than the innovative industry, and of course, this has Europe geographical locations where simply the generics are much more often produced. So, of course, member states that are impacted by this are also, let's say, more loud, because it doesn't impact only the availability of medicines in Europe as such, but also workforce and I would say national economic stability and so on. So definitely, countries with generic production are much more vocal. But on the other hand, also the innovative guys who should have higher margins because they are producing innovative things. They claim also that this is not killing them, but it, let's say, prevents other investments in the new medicines. So it is a topic that at the end is important for all member states. On the other hand, in all member states, we have the situation, you have usually Minister of Economy or Industry, Minister of Healthcare. On the other hand, the Minister of Environment, the typical situation is in Germany. They cannot find a common word on this. Yeah? And Germany is quite an important member state.
Yes. Well, let's turn to that, talking about investment in innovative medicines, because it's pharmaceutical and cosmetics, you know, it's perhaps less crucial that we have a new shade of lipstick than we have more innovative medicines to tackle the problems and potential future pandemics even. So tell us a bit about that. I'm sure you have the fact and figures to hand.
Yeah, well, I think the challenge for our industry, but also for the innovative industry, who also has some older, less expensive medicines in their portfolio, of course, is that, you know, you're going to have a choice. You're going to have to maintain that medicine at a loss or try and increase the price of the medicine, which is very difficult in Europe because we have regulated prices, so you cannot negotiate your prices. Or you're going to just stop producing the medicine, and that is not what we want to see because, you know, these are a lot of medicines for very important diseases, cardiovascular diseases, pain treatment, anti-infectives, epilepsy, bowel disease. I mean, all kinds of diseases where the patients just need them. We can't just tell them, I'm sorry, we're not going to have them anymore. And that's where I think the manufacturing point comes in that MEP Knotek was talking about. You know, we have these very large factories that produce big volumes of medicines, 70% of the medicines for like diabetes, you have about 30 million patients, okay? So these are, you know, fast, huge factories that are running. Well, if we choose to stop the production of those medicines, of course, that factory has no reason to continue to exist. It's huge, it's producing big volumes for special medical needs. And I think that's where the challenge lies. And we have data within some of our companies showing very, very clearly the closure of production sites as a result of this, unless we can make this change. And as Mr. Knotek was pointing out, we're not against measures to clean water. We just need this to be proportionate to the science. So are we really 92% of the chemical pollution in the water when there are 3,000 or so chemicals in total? And, you know, does it make sense to pile all of the cost onto the pharmaceutical sector, especially the high volume, cheap ones, which cannot afford to pay for this? So I think it's about bringing science, economic reality to the table, and we hope that the Parliament will really help us here.
In terms of a stop the clock, is that something you would like to see? I mean, or are there other fixes or solutions or potential pathways out of what is almost an impasse?
So definitely the stop the clock, I think, is important because it gives time for the Commission and the stakeholders, us, but also the water industry, to look at these scientific questions. We are very certain that this 92% claim is wrong. It is based on an error, a huge error that was made. Mistakes can happen, but then you fix them. And so we're ready to sit around the table. The stop the clock, why it's important, as was pointed out from an investment perspective, the fees that we have to pay come into force at the end of 2028. We plan our production for 2028 now. So we have, let's say, more or less until the end of the year to clear things up, to know where we are going in terms of production. And of course, this is a massive, and probably it's the most critical policy issue for our entire sector. We supply around 8 billion boxes of medicines a year, okay, to give an indication. So this is the biggest threat to our sector. Bigger than the Iran war, bigger than anything else out there. This is the biggest threat. And this is something we can fix with the European Parliament, with the European Commission, with the other stakeholders. And we'd really like to do this because literally tens of millions, basically every European eventually will be taking our medicines. So we need our sector. We are essential. And that's why we have the Critical Medicines Act and all this kind of thing.
Well, let's park that discussion for now. We do hope it will be resolved, and we'll maybe come back and talk about it in weeks and months to come. But you mentioned the Iran war, and I do want to talk, just to wrap up, a little bit more generally about the geopolitical context and its impact on the pharmaceutical sector here in Europe, on its competitiveness, on what is happening to supply chains. So tell us, what are the headline points we should be thinking about?
Well, I think the good news is there are no immediate shortages due to the logistics disruption. So obviously the ships are no longer avoiding the Suez Canal, are going around Cape Horn. And also flights are diverted, no longer going through Middle East hubs, but going through other hubs to get to Europe. So that's the good news, because still many chemical components and other components, plastic components, they're imported from places around the world, largely from Asia, I would say.
How exposed are we in general?
Well, we still produce about 60 to 70% of the medicines in Europe, but we only produce around 35-40% of the active pharmaceutical ingredients. So where we are more dependent is with the active pharmaceutical ingredients, but also for about 30-40% of the medicines, we're importing them. So we're not producing everything in Europe, and probably we can't. So we have some import dependence there. However, we've learned a lot with COVID how to deal with logistics disruptions. So this is something we're better at managing today. I think where the risk is for the supply in Europe is rather with the huge inflation that is going to occur. So for most small molecule chemical medicines, basically, they are petrochemical-based medicines. So they are produced from chemicals. Also, to clean the machines, you use solvents, okay, which are also petrochemicals. So the cost of petrochemicals, the plastic, all medicines come in a little plastic thing or in a plastic vial or something like that. All of these prices are going to explode. And so therefore, there's going to be an inflationary pressure on the medicines industry for sure, a very big one, as for other sectors. And so this is going to be, I think, the bigger challenge, and whether or not all of the component suppliers will not go bankrupt, I think, is the main challenge, not just here in Europe, but also outside of Europe, because obviously the cost of petrochemicals and all the feedstock and everything like that is going to have an impact for sure. So that's, I think, the more serious challenge.
Ondřej, I mean, obviously the war, we're a little bit heartened to hear about Adrian saying it and how we're not totally at a problem point yet, but there's also things like US tariffs and flip-flopping on that. And we tend to think about self-sufficiency in a sort of sovereignty sense, but with medicines, where are we? What can we do? How protected do we need to be? We talk about stockpiling. We've learned lessons from COVID. Talk us through your thinking on that whole area.
Yeah, maybe I start with the COVID. Everything bad is sometimes good for at least something. Yeah? And Europe realized the need for autonomy, or at least open strategical autonomy, and many measures, when we go back to health area, has been done, strengthened. I mean, this is quite positive. Maybe therefore also, and I'm very pleased to hear that the logistical impacts of the Iran situation are low risk, because I didn't know that, so I'm really happy to hear. But every following challenge was not so good. We had this start of the Ukraine war in Ukraine, and this means energy costs increase, and this goes towards inflation. Also, the production of medicines requires some energy, steam, and so on. So all this is something that must be taken in consideration. To my knowledge, the costs of generics didn't increase so much in the years. So basically, the sector absorbed all these shocks, which but reduces the space for another absorption of, for example, the urban wastewater treatment effect, which we were talking. And now on the top of this, we have this tariff situation. I think last year there was a deal on just 15% tariffs. Most of the generics were supposed to be excluded. Now you are facing 100% tariff starting July, August, if I'm not wrong. And again, maybe not all generics, but active pharmaceutical ingredients and patent medicines. I have understanding for it from the U.S. point of view to get the production on the U.S. soil. Question is whether this is a good moment to do it, because the world is already in tension, and I have heard that companies operating in Europe are already investing in the U.S. to either diversify or I'm not sure if diversify or move some production. So of course this is a shock that will have some impact. My personally, I am not working in the International Trade Committee of the European Parliament. I'm more focused on the technical engineering things and on the medical as such. But I'm pretty sure that they are working on it, including the European Commission, because my estimation is that the sector will feel it, and therefore citizens will feel it if it will go like that.
Well, be it an energy crisis or energy price hikes or a new set of tariffs announced via social media by Donald Trump, the knock-on effect impacts European competitiveness. And of course, we do try to plan here in Brussels, in the EU, but some things are beyond our control. How much does that worry you, Adrian? I mean, things like tariffs that may or may not come to pass.
Yeah, so it seems to change every day. One day we're exempt from tariffs, then we might get the tariffs, then we don't really know. So it's, of course, a lot of uncertainty, a lot of unpredictability. As was pointed out, there's a clear strategy from the US government to attract investment or to force investment into the US of pharmaceutical manufacturing. We think, and I think we share this as the whole pharmaceutical industry, we really need a pro-investment strategy for pharmaceuticals in Europe. We are one of the most important sectors in terms of jobs, R&D, manufacturing, investment, exports. And if we lose this sector due to competition from Asia, threats of tariffs from the US, it will really be a huge loss for jobs and growth, and also security of supply of medicines. So we really think that the Critical Medicines Act, the Biotech Act, all these industrial policy initiatives that can make Europe a compelling investment choice would really work, because we do have a competitive workforce here. We do have competitive R&D. We do have a lot of things to offer pharmaceuticals. But of course, we're facing these external pressures. As was pointed out, if we can get things like environmental policy right, because this is actually a sector that invests massively in improving the environment. All of our companies do ESG in a big way, reduce their climate footprint in a big way, which is not easy for a company that is chemical-based. And so, we really do a lot of these environmental things. So we're really, in that sense, a good, modern, kind of clean industry. But we need a little bit more alignment between the European Union and the industry to take this forward.
Well, to wrap up on a slightly positive note, I mean, you mentioned the importance of the pharmaceutical industry to competitiveness, to growth, to jobs. My home country of Ireland knows that very, very well. Quantify it a little bit for us and tell us, in the broader spectrum, do you think this approach from the Commission, but possibly held up by member states, of this made in EU by EU approach, is that something that could take the industry to be a world leader, or is this sort of approach too insular?
Well, it's certainly part of the approach. It's part of the Critical Medicines Act, but in a very limited way. So it's really in areas where basically we are totally dependent on one external provider who may or may not be our partner. And so in these cases, there will likely be some kind of made in EU incentive to maintain the manufacturing here or to encourage the manufacturing here in Europe. But I think a lot of other measures will also be put into place. So I think a key one is that pharmaceuticals will be part of the EU Competitiveness Fund. It's still under discussion, we know, but we hope that it will be part of the EU Competitiveness Fund, both for R&D and for manufacturing, because we do a lot of the manufacturing, of course. So I think that will be super important as well. And the last one, and this is a bit trickier, is that the buying of the medicines is done by member state governments, health insurance owned by the government, essentially. And of course, they're very focused on cost containment because health insurance is expensive, et cetera. I think we've reached certain limits of a cost containment model, and we need to move from a cost containment model towards an efficiency model. And here, the Critical Medicines Act is looking at reforming procurement. Maybe there'll be some discussions about pricing reimbursement at some point. And this doesn't necessarily, we don't want to bankrupt the healthcare systems, of course, but maybe it's trying to look at cost efficiency versus pure cost containment. I think that's where we need to go.
Well, I will say to our viewers, we have got another podcast on the Critical Medicines Act. So if you've enjoyed this conversation, you can go and check that out. Ondřej, let me come to you as a final wrap-up point. What should we be looking at? Where can we find notes of optimism for this sector?
I can fully stick to the words about the Critical Medicines Act, about European Bio Act. The pharma legislation has been improved recently, and yes, the new European budget is being negotiated. It is very tough negotiations from 160 degrees. Everyone is interested to be supported, but just when you do logical risk assessment, you come across the idea that medicines is something that people need. We are not far from COVID, and everyone remembers. So maybe our discussion was not always positive because we touch also the critical things, but in the long term, we shall remain positive because EU leaders realize the importance of the pharma sector.
Exactly. It's an important topic, and it's more people are talking about it, the more important it is to the most broad section of stakeholders. So thank you very much for joining us today. This has been the EU Perspectives podcast. That's it for now, but do join us again next time.